Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of The Best and Worst of Walt Disney World. I'm your host, Pete Werner, joined at the table, as always, by my good friend, Mr. Steve Porter.
Hello.
And back in the production nook, our producer, Mr. Craig Williams.
Hello.
So, this week, we are going to talk about your worst character dining experiences at Walt Disney World. A few weeks ago, we did a poll where we asked you for your best character meals, and this week we're going to do your worst. Now, what we did differently this time, based on feedback, was instead of just doing one poll and then taking the top 5 or top 3 or whatever and making those the best, and then the bottom 3 or the bottom 5 the worst, we've done 2 separate polls where we just asked the question, what's your best character meal and what's your worst? So we had some interesting results in doing that, and we'll get right into it with the number 5 worst character meal at Walt Disney World in Norway, Restaurant Akershus. 12.5% of the vote. We had 981 people participate in this poll. By contrast, when we asked for the best character meal, we had over 1,400 people participate in that. So there was definitely more interest in voting for the best than there was the worst, and that's not usually the case.
Usually people like to be negative, but
people like to be negative, but when it comes to the character meals, not so much. So number 5, Restaurant Akershus. I fully agree with this. It definitely belongs on the list. I don't think it's a great character meal at all. I think it's popular because of the princesses.
It's a perfect example of the type of character meals that we talk about all the time that are really there for the kids, but the food's not great. So,
Well, see, I love the food there, but I understand how it can be hit or miss. Like, if you don't like the cold bar that they set up with all the, smoked salmon, stuff like that, then it's not going to be for you. But in terms of actually character interaction, so I think this is actually one of the better, because for once you're in a character dining experience where every single character can actually talk to you. So it's none of the awkward back and forth with some of the fur characters.
Just funny story. My great niece, I should say, Victoria, it's my nephew's daughter. When she was about, 4 or 5, we took her over there for this, and she was in the stage where she was fascinated with shoes. She had like the shoe fetish thing going on. So she goes up to Cinderella and lifts up her dress to see her shoes. And of course, like, Cinderella's wearing crappy flats. And you could tell that she was like kind of stunned.
Like, no glass slipper. What's the deal?
Victoria was absolutely disappointed that, there was no glass slipper or anything like that.
That's
funny. But yeah, so no, the character interaction is great. And this is definitely one of those places where, and I think this is really the case. The 5 here, I think, are being judged on food. And there are some that are on the worst list that also made the best list. We'll get to that in a little bit. And I think the ones in the best list where people were voting more characters.
Yeah.
And worst, they were voting more food. Because
certainly number 1.
I think your point is great, that the character interaction is amazing here, but the food, not so much.
If
you don't like Norwegian, cold fish.
Yep.
Well, and if you compare this to Princess Fairy Tale Hall and the Magic Kingdom, you basically get all of these at once with no wait. So, I see the appeal of why it's popular, but I also understand why people vote it as the worst because of the food.
Yeah. Well, it's not the worst. It's number 5.
One
actually the least worst on our list.
Least worst of the worst.
Yes. Number 4 on our list, another one I'm fully in agreement with here, Mickey's Backyard BBQ over at Fort Wilderness. 13.4% of the vote, and it is a very close, it's almost a tie between number 4 and number 3. But Mickey's Backyard BBQ, again, it's fairly popular. I'm not going to rate it with some of the other, like Chef Mickey's, or it's not that difficult to get a reservation. But the food is not very good.
I've actually never have had the food at Mickey's Backyard Barbecue. I won't lie, but barbecue. But what I will say is the bathrooms there are the weirdest bathrooms ever because they're River Country's bathrooms. So there's like 50 urinals and like showers and like they're the leftover.
Really?
Yeah, it's the leftover water park bathroom. So it's just very strange. Just a weird side note, but
I did not know that. Yeah. So that's one reason to go. Check out it's what little of River Country you can still see. For those who don't know, River Country was actually the pool at Fort Wilderness at one point, but it was actually in the lake on Bay Lake. Or was that Seven Seas Lagoon over there?
Bay Lake.
Bay Lake. And it was shut down back in the day. It was like actually a water park. It was actually really their first water park, but it was considered the pool for Fort Wilderness. It's now abandoned. There's actually a thread on the boards. Maybe we'll have to try and find it and put it in the show notes if we can, where somebody posted pictures. They snuck in.
Oh, wow.
And they posted all these pictures from River Country and like abandoned, and because it was just left. All the infrastructure, everything was just left. And that's what Disney does. They just kind of let it decay. They don't like pull it out or do anything with it. So, but all right. So number 4, Mickey's Backyard Barbecue at Fort Wilderness. Number 3, which was number 2 on our best list a couple weeks ago, the Crystal Palace at the Magic Kingdom.
And if you go back and watch the episode, I said I think that this is overrated because if you don't like Winnie the Pooh, then I don't get it. I think the location's great, and if you like Winnie the Pooh, it's great.
I think you know, I've been there a few times for breakfast. Now, not recently, but I've been there a few times, and I always thought the food was pretty good.
I don't know. I've never been impressed by the food. I've always thought if you like the location and you like Winnie the Pooh, I totally get it, but I've never really have loved the food. So, I don't know, just personal preference, I guess.
Okay. Well, I think that's what it comes down to. But that got 13.7% of the vote, so it's just slightly worse on this list than Mickey's Backyard Barbecue. As I said, 13.4%. So they were neck and neck. This one did kind of surprise me. Number 2 was number 4 on our best list, Chef Mickey's The Contemporary, with 21% of the vote. I mean, this was significant. That 21% of the people rated this one their worst. Why do you think that is?
I think it's because it's overrated. So I think Chef Mickey's gets hyped up to be, you have to do, if you're going to Walt Disney World, I went there 2 years ago, you got to go to Chef Mickey's, you got to go to Chef Mickey's, you know, and so many people do love Chef Mickey's. That's why it made the top list. But for some people, it's just not for them. And so it gets hyped up so much that if I feel like it doesn't live up to the standard, like that's set too high, maybe.
Well, again, you know, I've had good experiences and bad experiences there. It would not make my worst list.
No, it wouldn't make mine either.
It would not make my worst list. Akershus, Mickey's Backyard Barbecue, and the one coming in at number 1 absolutely would. But Crystal Palace and Chef Mickey's, no, would not make my personal worst list. But
I would say Chef Mickey's would actually make mine.
Well, everything makes your worst list. There's nothing on your best list.
No, I have lots of good stuff on my best list. With Chef Mickey's,
but it's all Universal.
No. Kind of going off what Steve said, it's even beyond the overrated. There's a lot of work that gets involved in getting the perfect Chef Mickey's reservation, if you can even get that at all. You know, you might be eating either very late into the service or way too early, just not in agreement with what you want because so many people want it. And then on top of that, it's also very expensive for what you're going to get. And the food, like you said, it's hit or miss. So when all that just combines together, it's kind of a cluster. There's much better experiences out there. Granted, it is great that you can, you know, there's lots of... There's all the Fab Five, like we mentioned. I was going to say it's a Fab Five. It's a Fab Five character experience, and the food is pretty good. I found the food to be halfway decent. Yeah. Again, it's been hit or miss. I've had bad experiences there, but mostly the last few have been good. Yeah, and it's a very noisy location for
Craig,
me.
You're just
in the
plain
middle
wrong.
there.
You're wrong. Okay, you're just wrong. But that's part. You know, I'm sorry. I think its place in the atrium of the Contemporary is part of its charm. That's something really cool about sitting there having breakfast, and you have the energy. Especially, it's the morning. You're getting ready to start your day, head into the parks. there's an energy there. There's a monorail going by.
I don't know. I think I'm going to side with Craig on this one. I think it's kind of in a bad
You're
location.
both idiots.
No, it is. I mean, it's in a good location, as in it's close to the Magic Kingdom, but its actual location within the Contemporary.
I would rather see it back down, or it was never there, but I would rather see it down where the wave is, kind of off by itself, a nice little charming place, and then do something better with that atrium.
I disagree. I think. Okay, now part of this I think is a little skewed for me because one of my strongest memories at Chef Mickey's was when I was there with Bob Varley, who passed away in 2008, and I've got some pictures of him with the characters, and I remember that day we all had breakfast there, and then Bob and I went over to Epcot, and so I think part of that for me is and I remember that particular day, and there was this energy of having breakfast there. It was early in the morning, and the characters, and then going with your friend into Epcot and having a great day in Epcot. I think it just kind of set the tone for me that's always had a positive halo around it. But isn't that ultimately how we judge what we like and what we don't?
Sure.
That being said, these two are still wrong. But yeah, Chef Mickey's number 2, 21% of the vote. Number 1, by a mile. By a mile.
More than double than
51%. I don't think we've done a poll yet of this ilk that has had anything get 51% of the vote.
Yeah.
But this one certainly deserves it. Hollywood and Slime, or Hollywood and Vine, as Disney likes to call it, over at Disney's Hollywood Studios, is number 1 worst character meal on property, and that is absolutely right. Absolutely 100% right. Consistently terrible, terrible, terrible food, and the character interaction isn't even that great. But this place has been getting trashed for its food for so long. You would think by now Disney would have done something, because especially if you're going for dinner, you can expect to pay $50, $60 a person to eat this crap. And Disney doesn't seem to care. Does not seem to care.
Yeah. Well, it's another one that sometimes will offer either the Fab Five or the Disney Junior characters. So it's another one where people get pulled in by, this is what my kid really wants to do, and then they just figure, well, we can serve them slop.
And I've said this so many times before. I completely understand and support parents' decisions that, you know what, this is what my kid wants to do. Yeah, it's expensive. Yeah, the food sucks, but they want to see these characters. 100% the right thing to do. I don't fault you for doing that. Mm-hmm. I fault Disney for making you have to choose between the two, because at the prices they're charging, you shouldn't. But Disney knows how to make good food. This is not a secret to them. The good food recipe didn't die with some old Polish lady. They know how to make good food. So a little attention paid to this place and its kitchen could yield amazing results. And you would not have to choose between an experience your children want and shoveling the kind of slop these people serve at this restaurant into your face. You shouldn't have to make the choice.
And what I will say is that if you've never gone to Walt Disney World and you're listening to us talk about which one of these should I do, and you said, oh, I really wanted to do Hollywood and Vine because of the Fab Five, then I would recommend Tusker House. I'll say Cape May Cafe, even Chef Mickey's.
Chef Mickey's.
You have other options, and just avoid this place at all cost.
Absolutely. This is the only way Disney's going to change this restaurant is if we stop going there. If we stop giving them money. And then they're going to have to change it. But as long as they keep making their numbers, they don't care whether the food's crap or not. So I'm fully behind this. Like I said, 2 and 3, Chef Mickey's and Crystal Palace would not be on my list. Hollywood and Vine would absolutely be my number 1 worst character meal, worst restaurant, period, at Walt Disney World. Craig, you got anything to say about that?
I'm right there with you. The only thing that I can think of that, I truly thought this was great and up to Disney standards. When we ate there, was probably like the kids' macaroni and cheese, and that's because it's the same. It's the same ingredients as every other Disney restaurant that they serve that at. Other than that, it's not for adults. It's for people without taste buds.
No, it's not for people. It's adults who want to give their kids a certain experience and are being taken advantage of by Disney. That's what this is. When you have a character meal that popular and that price and that bad, it is simply, there's no other way around it. There's no other way to spin it. The parents are being taken advantage of, and Disney should be ashamed of themselves. So there it is, are your top 5 worst character meals at Walt Disney World. And that'll do it for this week's episode. Next week, we'll have your top 3 best cast member experiences. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you again next time.